Hey everybody, this is Victor again, and today I have a great interview with Brent Johnson, and he's going to talk all about being sovereign. And what's really interesting, you may have heard I just did an interview with Zen Honeycutt when we talked about taking your power, getting involved with government, the ideas of sovereignty. Next week, I'm going to be going to an event and listening to Catherine Fitz speaking about the same things. And Brent Johnson has been famous for these ideas for a long time. So he is the author of The American Sovereign, How to Live Free from Government Regulation, The Pursuit of Happiness, Freedom and the Human Spirit, and the spiritual book, The Quiet Voice of God. So he's got a great website where you can get all this information. Go to freedomradio.us, and you can listen to The Voice of Freedom. So The Voice of Freedom, Brent Johnson, really amazing stuff. We've spoken many times or several times earlier this year, and we finally got to do this interview, which I'm really glad to bring to you. So if you want to learn more how to be a sovereign human being and how to get involved in the government, how to take back your power, how to protect yourself, definitely check out Brent, check out his website, and check out this interview. He has a lot of good things to say. Here he is.
It's a violation of your God-given rights. What are you going to do about it?
Right. That should be the title for this video. What are you going to do about
Yeah.
it?
When's your birthday, Victor?
March 25th. Or did you want the year?
Well,
64.
how do you know?
Oh, right, exactly. It was written on a birth certificate.
Okay, and you read
Yeah,
it and you believe what you read, or maybe your
right,
mom told you and you believe what she told you. Now,
right,
I'm not suggesting that's not your birthday because your mother was probably a credible witness to the event.
right.
But how many things do we think of as I know this and I know that?
Mm.
Okay, that in actuality we only believe.
Okay, so the introduction does not even begin to dive into the stuff that we can talk about, Brent. Some people might have a hard time understanding how we came together because I'm a wellness guy. I'm all about nutrition and stuff like that. But the commonality is that we're both very serious truth seekers. And so that's one of the things I really appreciate. And then right now, with all the craziness going on, I would love to see more accountability, visible accountability for the criminals in government, in the wellness industry, et cetera. And I know you've got a lot to say about that. So let me stop talking so we can hear from my guest, Brent Johnson.
Well, first, let me say, let's talk about truth for a moment. Okay. There is not a whole lot in the world about what most people agree. I mean, there is one thing that most people will agree on. No matter what their religious, their political persuasions, anything at all. Just about everybody agrees that if God said it, it must be true.
Mm,
Okay. Not everybody agrees on who God is, but just about
right.
everybody will agree on that one thing. And that says to me that truth with a capital T, not your truth, not my truth, but that out there is a capital T truth. And that truth is the word. So I have a passion for truth. Okay. Um, I do not care to be around people who lie. Okay.
Mm,
And what I do is I'm a truth seeker. Now, in your arena, you're a truth seeker, okay, around wellness issues. I'm a truth seeker around freedom and
mm.
independence and sovereignty. But we are aligned in that we are both truth seekers. So I wanted to acknowledge you for what you said. I think that is,
Thank you.
and I think that is very true.
Yes. An
So
objective truth there, yes.
So, what you asked about accountability, government first off, let's have a little word about government.
Mm.
Government, okay, is according to Thomas Paine. Now, Thomas Paine, personal favorite founding father. I love Thomas Jefferson. I think Patrick Henry is great. Benjamin Franklin had a lot of good things to say, but Thomas Paine in the 18th century, he wrote an essay, and most people read it at the time, and you can still get it today. It's very available. It's called Common Sense. And
Huh.
in it, yeah, in it, he defines government and he says government at its very best is a necessary evil. Now,
Mm,
most people, when they quote Thomas Paine on that, they are using it to justify government. They say, you see, government is necessary.
right.
Whenever I view Thomas Paine's quote, I remember that government is fundamentally evil. Government is not your friend.
Right.
Government is not there to take care of you. People say today, the number one purpose of government is to keep you safe. That's not true.
Mm,
Okay. If you read the Declaration of Independence, which while lawyers will tell you it's not a legal document, it is the founding document of the United States of America. And
right.
in it, right after the holy words of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the very next words are to secure these rights, governments are instituted. In other words, the function, the purpose of government is to secure the free exercise of your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness
Mm,
and do nothing else. It is not the role of government to feed you when you're hungry. It is not the role of government to educate your children or indoctrinate them. It is not the role of government to give you health care,
mm,
okay, the cost of which it takes from other people because you can't afford it.
right.
Okay, that is not the purpose of government. A lot of people would say I'm being uncompassionate. Not at all, because the most compassionate thing that one can do is to honor the gifts that God, your creator, has given you, which is you are the rulers in this country. We, the people, are the rulers, and government
Mm.
is our servant, and a pretty poor servant at that. Now,
Yes.
now, the function of the Constitution is to keep the beast that is government, fundamentally evil, in check. The Constitution is kind of like a whip in a chair. You take a whip in a chair and you put it in a cage with a lion. What happens? Nothing happens because you're missing an ingredient. The missing ingredient is the lion tamer
Mm.
who picks up the whip and the chair and wields it in order to keep the beast that is government in its proper place.
That's the big problem, I think, in our country is that people aren't participating. Right.
We,
Right.
the people, are the
Right.
lion tamers.
Right. Right.
We have not done our duty very well, and because of that, an entire not even generation, an entire fabric of government. It has raised up people who are criminals. Now, when
Yes.
I say criminals, I mean it literally. I'm not speaking metaphorically here. Okay, because
Right.
the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. The Constitution is it's what's called a document of negative authority. Whatever powers the Constitution does not give specifically to the government does not have.
Mm.
Okay, so for example, the Constitution does not say that the government's job is to educate you. It does not say that the government's job is to give you food when you're hungry or any of that. That is not authorized in the
Mm.
Constitution. The people who work for government, whether they're elected or appointed, they all are trained to find ways to circumvent the Constitution as if it is an annoyance. In other words, they are trained to find ways to break the law.
Right.
That means they are criminals. Criminals can be defined by their character, and the character of criminals is very simply that a criminal seeks to take what's yours and make it theirs. That's what criminals do. So you have a government that has people who are both elected and appointed who are seeking to take what's yours and make it theirs. Okay.
Right.
They are criminals. Now, the reason I go through all of that is because it lays the foundation for everything else. When I said government is not your friend, that's what I meant because government is there to take what's yours and make it theirs. That's
Right.
what it does.
Right.
How do you stop it? It's up to us to stop it. in my book, The American Sovereign: How to Live Free from Government Regulation, at the beginning of the book, I printed an organizational chart, kind of like, the president, chairman of the board on top, then the president, then the vice presidents all, go to the answer to the president, then the department heads all answer to the vice president. That's an organizational chart. In this organizational chart, God is on top. Okay. We are endowed by our creator. How many,
Hmm.
show of hands now, how many of you out there were created by the government? Then you did not get your rights from the government, and the government can never, ever take them away
Right.
because it's not the government. So God is on top. From God, we are created in his image. So from God comes we the people. We are next. We are the vice
Hmm.
presidents, if you will. Okay. From we the people was created the Constitution. And from the Constitution was created the government. That
Hmm.
is the pecking order. God on top, then we the people, then the government, then, I'm sorry, then the Constitution, then the government. Government's at the bottom of the heap.
So I want to say something that some people might find controversial, but it seems to me that Trump has the right things in mind because he's trying to cut things back. He wants to get rid of the IRS. He's been quoting things from 100, 200 years ago, etc. It seems like he's on the right track, and certainly with accountability, they plan on having heads roll.
And you are correct. And in my opinion, he is indeed on the right track. However, Thomas Jefferson wrote that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And
Hmm.
based on that organizational chart, it is our responsibility
Right,
to ensure that President Trump does good.
right,
In other, he has great power. With that power, he can do great good. He could do great evil.
right.
We do not get to sit back and say, all right, we got a good president in there. Now we can relax, and not
Hmm.
worry about it. No, we can never do that because when we do that, the criminals feed on that. And
Yes.
more of them and more of them and more of them appear. So
To,
the only way to stop them is to have accountability, which is
hmm,
what you originally asked.
right.
Accountability. Okay. And accountability needs to hurt. Okay. It needs to hurt them. Um, in Los Angeles County, I just got a story yesterday. Okay. In Los Angeles County, um, there was a court ruling that issued damage awards in the amount of $4 billion for sex abuse and sex trafficking perpetrated by the government against the children, CPS and related agencies.
Oh, it's so
$4
crazy, hideous.
billion. Yeah. Well, you wonder why CPS is off the charts now. It's because they get money for it. They're given a financial incentive. So the solution is you hurt them. You
Right.
hurt them by taking their money, by taking their pension, by taking their job, by taking their liberty. Okay. You hurt them. Okay. Now, ordinarily, in a damage award against government officials, who pays for it? You do. Taxpayers. That's something that needs to change. Thomas Jefferson, when he was governor of Virginia, he actually had proposed a and supported a really great crime bill or no crime bill.
Hmm.
It did not pass because it was politically not correct at the time. But the bill basically qualified crimes and said that if you commit a crime, okay, the penalty goes to the victim or would be victim. So
Oh, I've heard
if
this
if
before.
you
Yeah.
kill somebody,
Hmm.
the person's family gets everything you have forever. Okay. If you rob somebody, depending on how much you rob, okay, a proportional amount, like maybe you rob maybe three times what you robbed, gets taken from you.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, if you try to rob somebody, then based on that, a certain amount is taken from you. In other words, it hurts the perpetrator.
Right.
Okay, it's not it's and yeah, there may be jail time as well, but the idea was to hurt the perpetrator because discourages
Right.
that discourages the criminal.
It seems like we're hurting the victims more often in
Yeah.
modern times. It's insane.
Yes, it is. And
It's
30
insane.
years ago, that's what I said to people. I said, "This is an insane asylum."
Yeah.
I've written a number of song parodies, and one of them is to the tune of Billy Joel's "You May Be Right." Okay,
Good
you may be
song.
right, I may be crazy. Okay, and the name of the song is "The World Is Crazy." The world is nuts. We've all gone crazy.
It really
And
is. It's so upside down. It's
yes,
just
it is.
it's bizarro
It's
world.
it's
Yeah.
exactly what I say in the song. But it is insanity out there, and when insanity is the rule, truth and common sense will be considered to be radical, okay, and nuts.
Right.
The truth teller will be regarded as nuts.
Absolutely. I've been afraid to speak truths up. I'll only go up to a certain limit because I know I will disenfranchise so many people if I'm too truthful, right? If I'm too forward with the truth. But at the same time, I don't want to remain silent. You got to speak the truth.
Well, and yeah, see, I what I do is I have a way of pushing the envelope without ever being called a conspiracy theorist. Um,
Mm,
I had the number one weekend show in the Los Angeles commercial radio market in 2002. It's a serious statement because LA is the number two commercial market in the country. New York is
mm,
number one. And um, and one day I did a show on concentration camps in America. Now,
wow.
my network was Salem Communications, and I had a friend in the executive office as a vice president, um, and he used to tell me that what the atmosphere was in Salem when I went on the air. They'd always listen to my show, and when I
Mm,
announced I was going to do a show on concentration camps, they all turned. He told me they all turned green. Oh my God,
mm.
what is he going to do? And so I did the show. But I told the audience during the show, don't believe a word that I say. Go to Las
Disclaimer.
Vegas,
Mm,
go to Las Vegas, get on the strip, go north 25 miles, and look left. Now, if you go to Las Vegas and you get on the strip and you go north 25 miles and look left, you will see. You would swear it's a German Stalag from World War II. You will see a concentration camp. It is active. Okay.
wow.
It is actually the barbed wires are pointing in, meaning they are designed to keep people in, not
Yeah,
keep people out.
right.
Okay. So what would happen is I would push the envelope real heavy. Okay. But I would do it in a way that you couldn't deny what I was saying. You couldn't just go out and say, this guy's a conspiracy theorist
Mm.
because I was always so credible, and that's what made the show so popular.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Nobody ever heard anything like it. Um, and I so for me, like I said before, truth in my mind is the word.
And this
So,
leads right
so
into censorship and free speech. I mean, you're already getting right into it. We're doing self-censorship, but
mhm. No, but no, this is true. Uh, the way I distinguish which is more important, okay, you
mm,
know, uh, censoring misinformation or allowing freedom of speech. Well, you are endowed by your creator with certain unalienable rights.
right.
Now, I said before, government cannot take away your rights. It can't. It could take your arms, it could take your legs. It cannot take your rights. By the way, government is an it. It is not a they. Okay, most people say we're talking about the government. We say, well, they do this and they do that. When you do that, you actually um, personalize, humanize government. Government is
Oh,
an it. So I always talk about government as an it.
good
And
point.
it can't, yeah, that's what I do. It cannot take your rights. What it can and does do is it violates your rights.
Mm,
So the question And anytime the government violates your rights, it always asks this question. Never out loud, never openly, but the question is always asked, what are you going to do about it? We, all of us, need to answer that question. When your rights are violated, what are you going to do about it? We have been sitting around for most of 250 years not answering the question. And they and so that empowers them to violate us more.
Right.
When we start hurting them, and there are ways to do that. There you can hurt them through legal means, okay?
Right.
But you have to make sure that the damage comes out of their pay, that
Right.
they lose their job, they lose their pension, they lose their property. Okay, you have to make sure that otherwise it doesn't hurt them. Okay, um, you have the unorganized militia, and they are all over the country, and they are well armed and they are well trained. Most of them are former military. Okay,
Mm.
and we need the militia to get involved. The there was a situation about 2 years or so ago, a woman named Mickey Clan. You may have heard of her. She was big in the news at the time. She had brought a bunch of people to the Arizona Maricopa County Board of Supervisors meeting, and then she lambasted them. She fried them to the point that they all
Nice.
left the room. They just walked
Nice.
out.
Mm.
And she cried about it as a big victory, and it was a big victory, but it was also an incomplete victory. It was a battle won. She never followed it up. The way she should have followed it up is the next day or week. She gets a bunch of armed militia, nicely dressed. They walk into Board of Supervisors office, okay, and walk up to the Board of Supervisor and say, "You're going to have to come with us now." Well, who are you? We're Americans. You're going to have to come with us now. I'm not going with you. Yes, ma'am, you are. I really don't. Please don't make a scene. You're going to have to come with us.
Is this like a
Oh,
citizen's arrest kind of situation?
yep,
Right.
yep.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to call the police. Well, you can do that, man, but you're going to have to come with us. Yeah. And they would literally escort these people out of their offices. You are being removed from office. Now, the cops can come.
Wow.
Cops show up and everything and say, you can't do that. Well, yes, we can. Look, we've got badges and we've got guns. Well, we don't have badges, but we do have guns.
Hmm.
Well, we're willing to use our guns on you. Well, we're willing to use our guns on you. you know, that's what's needed. Okay. Now, I'm not sitting there saying, let's go out and shoot everybody up. Okay. That's the furthest thing
It's a
from what I'm thinking.
deterrent.
But
It's a
if
deterrent.
yeah, if you have a force of militia willing to exercise their abilities, they won't have to because there are so many more of them than there are of the government criminals. And the government criminals have no passion for what they do. They do it because they can get away with it.
Right. I
When
think
they
it's, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just
when
going to add, I think the guns are what kept things from getting even worse during COVID.
Oh, most certainly. Most certainly.
Right.
But the real point here is you get accountability because you don't put up with it. Yeah,
Right.
we got the North Arizona County Board of Supervisors. We told them what the story was. Now we don't let them back into their offices because the week after Mickey Clan's speech to the board, they were back in their offices, still
Like
taking
nothing.
taxpayer dollars. Okay. And if you depend upon the criminal government to address the crimes, you will be disappointed.
Hmm.
Okay. The criminal government simply won't address the crimes. Now, President Trump is doing, in my opinion, a really good job. Okay. But you could see, look at you know, the unlawful acts by lower court judges to try and
Yes.
stop him and delay him and such. What he needs to do, and I believe that Attorney General Pam Bondi has started to do that. Yeah. Um, Washington State, the governor just made it illegal for other states' militias to enter the state to support the deportation. So, what needs to happen? They need to enter anyway.
Right. And they will. Yeah, right. They're
Yeah,
not going to
you
be
just go
stopped.
in anyway. Pam Bondi needs to go in and arrest the governor.
Right.
She needs to go after the Illinois governor. Illinois governor has been harboring, and the mayor of Chicago has been harboring illegal invaders.
Right.
The governor of Maine has been out and out refusing to stop allowing deviant transgenders, okay, who pretend that they're women when they're men, okay, from abusing women. She
Right.
simply said, "I'm not going to do it." What are you going to do about it, President Trump? He, she's working on it right
He,
now.
right.
She's working on it. She's going to go in and she's going to arrest him.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's going to take him away.
Yep.
And as far as I'm concerned, throw him in a dungeon and let him sit there for a couple of years waiting for a trial that never comes because we have a precedent for that. Look at the J6ers. You know, well,
Right.
we can wait and delay forever and ever, and you can just sit there on your rump in that dirty,
Right.
dingy dungeon, yeah, and waste away.
Right.
And the world will be better off
Right.
for all of it.
And it
So,
is happening. It is happening. I mean, like every day is Christmas, I feel now. Right? Because
mhm,
we are seeing people getting carted off
yeah,
to
yeah.
jail.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And so, when it comes to accountability, okay, the first thing we need to remember is it's not the government that rules us. It's we that
Mm,
rule the government. That's number one. Number two, okay, is that it is our responsibility, not our government representatives, okay, to fix this,
right.
whatever it takes.
With our vote, with
Yeah,
petitions,
yeah.
we just change the people if we don't like them. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's in the Declaration. When a
Right.
long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to institute new guards for
Mm,
their safety and security.
right.
That's it. It's right there. Plain English, plain language. Okay, we have the right to alter or abolish it. We do not need to ask for permission to do that.
Right.
So, with me, I never look at government as my friend. Ronald Reagan once said, the worst words that you can ever hear, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And
That's a great
yeah,
expression. Yeah.
and it is. And
Yeah.
it is. And he was right. He was absolutely correct. So, yes, accountability is paramount. Okay,
Mm,
because without accountability, you have no disincentive for the
mm,
criminals.
right.
Okay, why shouldn't I keep committing crimes? I'm not going to lose anything.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's been going on for so long. People just don't realize how powerful they actually are. They need to be reminded, which is another thing that motivated me to speak with you because, I mean, that's really what you do. I would almost go so far as to say it almost seems like your purpose to exist is to give the power back to the people, to remind them, to inform them, to coach them, guide them. I'm sure many people hire you even to do such.
Um,
Um,
I consider it to be a gift from God because
mm,
I have an ability, and I'm sure you've heard it already just in this discussion. I have an ability to simplify complex issues, put them in such a way that people get it, really get it. Um, I'm very fond of discussing with people on the air the difference between what you believe and what you know.
mm,
When's your birthday, Victor?
March 25th. Or did you want the year?
Well,
64.
how do you know?
Oh, right, exactly. It was written on a birth certificate.
Okay, and you read
Yeah,
it and you believe what you read, or maybe your
right,
mom told you and you believe what she told you. Now,
right,
I'm not suggesting that's not your birthday because your mother was probably a credible witness to the event.
right.
But how many things do we think of as I know this and I know that.
Mm,
Okay. That in actuality, we only believe. And is the source of that information as credible as your mother is to the event of your birth?
right, right. We need to challenge those things.
I did a
Mhm.
podcast once, wrote an article and turned it into a brief podcast, and it's posted on my website called "How Do You Know It's True?"
Mm,
How do you know it's true? When you ask that question, you'll find in most cases you don't. Okay,
right.
and that's fair because now you know that okay, I don't know this is true. I believe it. Now you can ask the follow-up question, which is the source of your belief credible?
Mm,
And you know, when you ask questions like that, the brain starts thinking about it. Whether or not you even want to think about it, you will think about it.
right,
Yeah,
right.
you start thinking about it and everything. I said, oh, yeah, that's what I get people to do. All that I'm really doing is planting seeds. I'm just sowing seeds, you know,
Mm,
and those seeds will grow. And some of them will go barren, and some of them will grow for a time and then go barren. But as
mm,
long as we keep planting seeds, we will win this war. This
right.
is a war between the forces of good and the forces of evil.
Yeah, we can see it changing. I mean, we can see those many seeds are sprouting now every day. More people are waking up, starting to, empowering themselves more, questioning more, as you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, the tide has turned.
So we were going back to censorship and free speech.
Hmm.
Okay. See, free speech is a God-given right.
Right,
Okay. That means that you have the freedom to provide false information.
right.
Now, if you provide false information and that false information damages somebody's life, liberty, or property, well, that's actionable. Okay,
Mm,
there are laws that protect you from that, and you can go after the person who issued that false information to harm you.
right.
Okay, but to sit there and say, well, people are being hurt by false information, therefore we have to stop them from giving out that information that we say is false, is a very slippery slope.
Mm,
Because what you're doing now is you are taking it upon yourself, or the government is, or whomever is taking it upon yourself to restrict that which is a gift from God. And it really does come down to that. You know, whenever we get into these types of discussions, ultimately it comes down to whether or not you believe there is a God or not. Most of the
mm.
people who seek to abuse others would say there is no God. You know, hey,
Uh,
listen, if I think I'm a woman, I'm a woman. You don't have any right to say otherwise. Okay? Because there is no God. If there is a God and God made males and God made females, and you can't argue with that. You know,
right,
end
right.
discussion. Okay? So the only way to continue the discussion is to start from the premise that there is no God. Um, there are 8 tenets to to Marxist communism. And the very first of those tenets is there is no God, there is only the state.
Oh, wow, that sounds so
That is
terrible. Yeah,
it is the first tenet of Marxist communism. Okay, that there is no
right,
God. Because if there is a God, everything else is unsustainable. Okay? You can't have a communist system, okay, if there is a God.
right.
The two are mutually exclusive. You know, and so every time you run into this kind of craziness, the insanity that's going on, you know, you take a moment and look back and say, where does God fit into this?
Mm,
You know, and the people who are promoting um, whatever it is they're promoting to take control of the world, because that's really it. You got people who want to
right,
rule the world.
right.
Um, those people start with, because they have no choice, there is no God.
We
They have
saw
to.
that, yeah, we saw that happening like systematically during COVID, trying to get God out of the classrooms, not letting people into their churches, etc. They attacked it so hard.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
because if you accept God, okay, then most of the things that these people do, they can't they can't justify them. You
right,
know, they simply can't. So the entire discussion goes away. And I'm not saying here, okay, that it matters whether you're Christian, Jewish, Catholic,
right,
okay,
right,
whether or not you're Muslim, okay, that's
right,
not relevant here.
right,
The
right,
question is there a creator? Is there a
right,
higher source than we?
right.
Okay, does such exist? You can have theological discussions about whether that's
Mhm.
Yahweh or Allah or whatever. That's a
Right,
completely different discussion.
right,
Okay, but the very existence of a higher power precludes just about all of the garbage and
right.
craziness that is happening today.
Yeah, and unites all the religions.
Yes, it does.
So, so it gets away with those divisions too, which is nice.
And even in the Declaration, it doesn't specify who the creator what is because it doesn't matter.
Right,
We are endowed by our creator, meaning our rights come from a higher source than government. Back then,
right.
that was unique. That was radical. That had never been thought about in modern history. It had never
Hmm.
been. It had
Right,
always
right,
been that the king's word is law.
right,
That's all. The king rules because God put king on earth, and therefore the king rules.
right. That's a very important context for people to realize that the Constitution, the US was created because of the context at that time, so
All
it's,
men are created equal. What
yes,
that
yes.
means is look where we came from. We came from Old Britain. In Old Britain, it was a two-class system. It still is. You have nobility
Mm,
and you have commoners.
right.
Okay. The nobility own all the property and run all the government. Okay. Commoners cannot back then own property. Commoners
Mm,
were not able to participate in the making of law.
wow.
And if you were a commoner, you could never become noble. You might marry a noble, but that didn't matter. You were always a commoner.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so the
Horrifying.
statement, all men are created equal, was intended to say there are no distinctions between nobles and commoners. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that men and women have to make the same amount of money, and it doesn't mean
Right,
that
right,
all of that is garbage.
right,
It meant very simply that each of us is on the same level. Now,
right,
okay, you may work and I may not work. You may earn more money than me because you work and I don't work. Okay, these are choices that we make.
right, right.
Okay, these are choices that we make, and you can sit there and say, well, there is oppression and there is prejudice and all of that is true. But the same thing I said before is also true. When that happens, whether it happens by an individual who's prejudiced against you because of the color of your skin, or a government, okay, that has decided to be prejudiced against you for whatever reasons. Whether it
Mm,
happens, it's the same thing. It's a violation of your God-given rights. What
right,
are you going to do about it?
right. That should be the title for this video. What are you going to do about
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
I think
it's a good title. It's a good title.
yeah.
But I mean that really is the issue. I do a weekly conference call where people call and ask me all kinds of questions. And at the beginning, during my introduction, okay, I remind people that you are the supreme ruler of your life.
Mm,
Now, again, I'm not speaking metaphorically, I'm speaking literally. You
right,
are endowed by your creator. Your creator is the supreme sovereign of the universe. That means you are part of the royal family. You are kings and queens in your own right. That's who you are. That's what you are. You change the world. Okay. And I remind people about that every single week, that you're responsible for what you do. Okay. And what you do is significant.
Right.
Don't just go out there and follow somebody and do what they say because they said something and you like what they say. You know, think about it. And then if you agree, go ahead and support it because you agree, not because they said it. You
Your
know,
voice matters. Everybody's voice matters. Everybody's vote matters. They just got to use them.
that's correct. But first, they have to believe that. You have to believe that you are a king, you are a queen in your own right.
Mm.
You know, you are significant. The government is a bunch of bureaucrats. That's all.
Right.
Okay. And when you say, well, they work for me, yeah, they do. Okay. And you're the boss.
Right.
Yeah. And most people, are learning that. They're being exposed to that more and more, and hopefully they're learning more and more of that. You know, but that's ultimately the bottom line. When you look at things like
Mm.
disinformation and free speech, or you know, um, the government is our ruler, the government is our servant. When you look at all those things, you take a look and inject the creator into it, okay, and see how everything plays out from there. A
Mm.
big issue: democracy, republic. Okay, we are a republic. It is in the Constitution several times. We are
Right.
guaranteed a Republican form of government. That does not mean the Republican Party. Okay.
Right.
Okay. We are not a democracy. The founding fathers wrote extensively of democracy, and what they said was that a democracy is repugnant to a free society.
Mm.
A democracy essentially is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner.
Right. Or
Yeah.
just the rule of the majority.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
that's
good.
what it is. If 50.01% of the people can vote away the rights of the rest of us in a democracy,
Right.
because majority rules. But in a republic, every individual is recognized as having rights given by God,
Mm.
and no vote of the people. No, you can get 99.9% of the people cannot vote away your rights,
Right.
under any circumstances. So one day I hope to sit down with President Trump, and one of the things I will say to him is I object to how you continually talk about the D word, democracy.
Oh,
We
okay.
are not a democracy. We have
Right.
never been a
Right.
democracy. We do not want to be a democracy. We are a republic. And in that training, this is how the military were trained. Okay, that it says a democracy, okay, is mob rule. It's a mobocracy. It leads to tyranny. That's
Right.
what it says. And it
Right.
also says a republic leads to statesmanship, okay, and leads to, um, let's see the exact words, results in statesmanship, liberty, reason, justice, contentment, and progress.
Very
Okay,
nice. Yeah. So we
that's
definitely need to hear that more and more.
more and more and more. That's why every time I hear the D word, I cringe. What I was going to say is the communist Democrats talk about, you know, President Trump is trying to undermine our democracy, 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 democracy. And I would just like to be there and say, we're not a democracy. What's the matter with you? Have you ever read the Constitution?
Right.
Do
Well,
you know the difference?
I
You
guess
know?
another thing is we could be glad if he's undermining a democracy.
Well, that yeah,
Right.
that's
Right. It's
very
another way of looking at it.
that's very high-minded of you. Yes.
Right. Because we got to get back to being a republic.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And so you know, this is what I'm about. I mean, I'm about the truth seeker, okay?
hmm,
And I believe that you know our greatest gifts are the gifts that God gives us.
Mm,
One of the things I ask at the end of every show I do is, what are you willing to do to protect and preserve your liberty? And what are you not willing to do to protect and preserve that same liberty? And the reason I ask the second question is that if you answer it, you give me the tools that to use to enslave you. I'm
uh-huh.
willing to do anything except I'm not willing to risk the safety of my children. Now that
Mm,
sounds great. That sounds really responsible. Most people would say, yeah, yeah. But now all I have to do is threaten the safety of your children and you'll give up your liberty and then you have nothing
uh,
of value to leave to your children.
right, right.
Remember Mel Gibson's The Patriot, okay? During the Revolutionary War, and he lost two of his children.
Mm,
And it was a tragedy. The question is, was it worth it? If you say no, then you do not value the gift of freedom that the
right,
Creator has given you.
right. Yeah, it's a tough choice. I mean, a lot of us are faced with these kinds of tough choices right now. People
Yes,
don't
we are.
realize, right? They don't realize how serious it is.
Yes,
Brent,
it is.
I think we should do a part two because I would like to expose people also more to all your resources, books, radio show. Um,
Yeah. Well, let me just tell. Yeah, I think we should. I think it would be a good thing. But let me briefly tell about the website. Okay. We've got a tremendous website, www.freedomradio.us. Okay. There's tons of free information there.
mm,
There's also products, books, CDs, DVDs, other products in promoting and supporting your freedom and your independence. And then the services that we offer, which are to preserve and protect your property rights, are the absolute best of their kind out there. We have the most effective common law pure trust organizations out there to protect your property rights, not only your home, your vehicles, but your businesses. Okay, ways to run your businesses in such a way that you minimize or even eliminate taxation. You minimize your liability, and by doing that, you actually um, become invisible to the government because
uh,
there's a principle in law: ownership equals liability, and it doesn't matter if you or a trust or a corporation is the owner.
mm,
Okay, and it doesn't matter if you even know what the liability is. Ownership equals liability. So the less you own, okay, the less liability you have. It's easier to find liability than ownership. So the government looks for your liabilities and draws a straight line to your ownership. Okay, if you don't have liability or you reduce it to next to nothing, you become effectively invisible to the government. It leaves you alone to live your life in peace and freedom, which is the whole point of all of this.
very nice. Very nice. All
So
right. Well,
I'd love to come back and discuss that stuff, with you and do another show and talk about some of those types of things, ways to free yourself from government control, ways to protect your property rights and your assets, protect you from infringement by the alphabet agencies like the IRS. There's all kinds of things I can teach all of you. Um, the number one book on sovereignty in the world is my book, The American Sovereign: How to Live Free from Government Regulation. And it's a tremendous book. You pick it up, you start it, you won't be able to put it down, and it will really and truly, it will be like taking the red pill in the Matrix. It will
nice.
change your perspective on everything. And
Nice. Nice teaser for our next episode.
I
Yeah.
will look forward to.
Very
I will.
good. It's so I should apologize because it took us several months. We started talking a few months ago, but at least we got this one out finally.
Yeah, well, and yeah, this is what happens when I start talking. I used to do 10-hour freedom seminars, and at the end of 10, who sits there for 10 hours?
Oh,
After 10 hours, I would have people come up and say, "Can you go for another couple of hours? No
oh
stay."
man, man.
You know, and again, this is God has given me this gift, this ability to explain these complex issues in such a way that people really get it.
Mm,
And then once you get it, then you're in a position to make a decision. You're the king. You're the queen. You
right.
can now make a royal decision as to how you're going to conduct yourself.
Mm,
Because you now have information. Thomas Jefferson said that, a free press and an educated populace is eternally free.
mm,
I'm paraphrasing, but
mm.
that's really the way it is. We also have a toll-free number. You can give us a call at any time, 888-385-3733. 888-385 free. Okay. Or again, www.freedomradio.us. And I would love to come back, have another conversation about wherever we want to take it. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Brent. This was excellent. And reach out, people. Contact Brent. Check out his resources. They are amazing. Thank you again.
God bless you, my friend.
You too.